Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Charles Kempf, former president of the French Spiritist Federation between 2018 and 2022, a long-time researcher on the history of Spiritism and Allen Kardec, who has been working in French and international Spiritist movements since 1992. Charles has been a dedicated member of numerous French and international Spiritist councils, serving as General Secretary of the International Spiritist Council between 2012 and 2016, and was responsible for the Council's coordination in Europe between 2007 and 2018. He is one of the leading experts in the study of Camille Flammarion, who I have published an essay on in 2025. I'm deeply grateful for Charles taking the time to join us and offer his insights on the increasing need for a new spiritual paradigm. Well, Charles, thank you for coming on today. Really appreciate you.
Hello, Colin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I wanted to start today with kind of an introduction into Spiritism, and I'm looking at this from the point of view of having studied a little bit of Flammarion and how he fits into it. So I was wondering if you could give us this kind of broad history, if you will, maybe with a focus on Allen Kardec and so forth of Spiritism.
Okay, so the psychic phenomenon or the spiritist phenomenon are existing since human being exist on the earth. So it's simply some natural faculty which exists since nature exists. But it has intensified in the 19th century. It started in US, with this Hydesville the haunted house phenomenon, or RAPS. And this became known all around the world. And in France, at the beginning of the 1850s, there was a kind of a fashion of moving tables, the people were diverting in the salon, what they call salon in French, inviting a lot of people for social events and so on. And the one who made the most exotic, let's say, things got more people. And so it was a kind of a fashion for having the table moving everywhere around in Paris. But not only in Paris, it went to Australia. I mean, all around the world, and this went until 1855, where Hippolyte Léon Denis Arrivaille, which was a professor, heard about table moving. He thought, why not? Table can move. Electricity has, at that time it was not known as today, this motorist power and so on. So it's possible that a table can move. That is not a surprise for me. And then a guy told him, yeah, but not only the table moves, but also the table answers to questions. And then Rivail was skeptic. He was saying, this I can only believe if you demonstrate me the table has a brain to think. Otherwise, I will not believe in it. And he has been invited and participated to a session, and he could himself see the phenomenon. The table were really moving, levitating, suspended in the air without anyone touching the table. So he observed it very carefully. He saw that there was no trick, no cheating, nothing. And that is how he started getting interest into it. He said, really, here there is a phenomenon, and I want to look to try to analyze, observe, and try to determine what are the causes of this phenomenon. And this is how he continued his researches, started asking questions, answers to the spirits, and how he managed to compile the first issue of the Spirits book. This was in April 1857, so 2 years later. And it was with 500 questions and answers given by the spirits. So answer he got via the mediumship. So either the tables or automatic writing, and another method with a basket. He received the elements from the spirits. That's why he called it Spirits Book, because the ideas in the answers were not his personal ideas, but the ideas of the spirits. And even in some points, the spirits had a different opinion compared with his personal opinion. For instance, reincarnation, he was skeptic at the beginning, but he ended up convinced through the arguments. So you see, the way he proceeded was totally different from a fashion or getting fun. He simply looked at it very carefully without preconceived ideas, and his observation and the methodology he applied was really inspired from the scientific method from that time, mainly positivism from Auguste Comte or from Descartes. And so he had a rational approach to this spiritualist phenomenon. And that is really the big revolution he brought. These areas which were generally studied and reserved to traditional religions, he started investigating them rationally, scientifically, with common sense and analyzing everything, showing whether it's compatible with the scientific knowledge or not. So clearly changing from the traditional religious approach, which was in force over millenniums before him. And then he ended up writing more books. The movement grew. There was in US on spiritualists. He estimated in 1869 a couple of millions, so 5 to 10 million spiritualists. And in the rest of Europe, he also estimated around 1 million people who were interested in following those studies and investigation. And there were already hundreds of spiritist groups created all around in Europe and in the Americas mostly. So that is more or less how it started. And Camille Flammarion was born a little bit before, in 1842. And Kardec created the Paris Spiritist Study Society, or the Spiritist Study Society of Paris. And Flammarion discovered the Spirits book in 1860 and joined that Spiritist Society. So he knew personally Allen Kardec and spent a couple of years participating to the meetings and helping in the development of the Spiritist body of knowledge or Spiritist philosophy. And this is basically how it started.
And Flammarion also, he was reading one of Kardec's books, I think when he was 15, is that correct?
18.
18, okay. So, but Kardec was certainly one of his early influences. And then when he joins in his 20s, he actually has some sessions with Kardec present.
Exactly. And Flammarion, so he joined, he read the Spirits book in 1860 and joined the Kardec Society. He went to meet the author of the books. So he knew him a couple of days or weeks after he read the books, because he wanted to know more, of course. So that's when Kardec invited him. By the way, Kardec is a pseudonym of Hippolyte Rivail. He adopted at the publication of the first issue of the Spirits book in 1857. So now I talk about Kardec, not Rivail anymore.
Right.
And Flammarion so joined immediately the group and participated during several years. And he was even acting as a medium. So he got some written messages during the mediumistic session. And these messages were about astronomy, about the solar system, the moon, the comets, Jupiter, the different planets, and so on. And the signature which came at the bottom of the messages was Galileo. Galilei. So he knew already about astronomy because that was what he studied. He's a self-made man, so he did not course in the university in France. he learned by himself and also in free lessons given by scientists in Paris at that time. That's how he got all his knowledge. And at that time, he was already working in the Paris Observatory of Paris, which is, you know, the Luxembourg Garden, just a little bit beyond the Luxembourg Garden. And that is where also he started making his own astronomical observations. So he had already quite some good knowledge in astronomy when he got these messages.
And Flammarion writes a number of novels, Urania and Lumen included.
Yes.
And those, since you're closer to the actual French, you know, his French automatic writings and the stuff that he did while he was in the sessions, how do you think about those novels? Do you think that this is a mix of possible mediumistic connection going on, or do you think this is purely sort of his own personal philosophy?
I will make it simpler. It was his idea. He wrote, not mediumistically, but of course, certainly he was inspired by the spirits when he was writing. Like any writer, when they write something, they are inspired. They get inspiration.
That's right.
The inspirations that they just call like this, we as spiritists or spiritualists, we know that it comes from spirits which are in affinity with us and which help us when we are trying to do something good.
Mm. So
And
in
by
this,
the way, Flammarion, he was not spiritist. He has been educated Catholic by his mother. So existence of God, his mother and his grandfather mostly had a big influence on him when he was young. Then he went to the college, which was also Catholic college in the city of Langres, inside France, Haute-Marne. And then when he get teenager, starting to think a little bit more about the things, you know, trying to understand, he was deeply disappointed because he didn't get the answers, you know, from the dogmatic approach of the traditional religions at that time. That is then when he was looking for spiritualist philosophies since Socrates, you know, since antiquity and until the philosophers of the Middle Age and of the 18th and 19th century, where he found more consistent answers to his questions. But what he kept from his youth was believing God and believing in having a soul. Those basic beliefs he always had since his Catholic education, and he kept them all over his life until he died. Of course, these beliefs were strengthened then by the philosophies he was studying, and also by the Spiritist philosophy he started to study also in 1860.
so Flammarion in that sense was very non-sectarian, a very much an independent philosopher.
Exactly. Exactly. He was not really, you know, he was participating, but not really engaged or heavily committed, you know. There were also free, how do you call that in English? Freemasons?
Freemasons, yes.
Freemasons, yes, which were trying to, of course, to get him in their group, but he always refused because he always wanted to keep his liberty and autonomy. But he was always in very good relationship with everyone. You know, he was
Right.
quite open. He was a quite fair, nice, you know, discussing, having his own opinions, you know, but respecting also the opinions of the others.
Yeah, it seems like from my reading, you know, he doesn't lash out at so much of the religions around him as he does kind of the approaching materialistic paradigm that was sort of parallel to his time. And in that sense, I see some of the Spiritists as still being ahead of their time, because I know Flammarion was looking forward to when, you know, science could totally prove some of these spiritual fundamentals, and he might have overestimated that a little bit, and it's taking us a little while to sort of catch up.
Exactly. So we in the Society of Kardec in Paris, he met a lot of people, which made other meetings around, you know. And among those people, there was a lady, which was Mademoiselle Miss Huet, Huet, and she had, this saloon and moving tables and the groups and so on. So he participated also to that groups where, with Kardec, it was more study, making questions, answer, automatic writing. For him, the moving table were of the past already in 1857, it was the start. But some other group continued practicing moving table and dancing or speaking table. And Flammarion participated to those groups. And he even wrote, I discovered when I made the study, I discovered that he wrote, there are two books, full books, with the minutes of meetings in this group of Miss Huet, giving also the name of the participants, which was quite a lot of people very well known in Paris. So he always was interested in observing also the material phenomenon, moving or physical stuff, not only the intellectual stuff. So because, and that is what he said when he was making a speech at the funeral of Allen Kardec in 1869. He told, science should now clearly investigate all this physical phenomenon. And in the meantime, he wrote two books, The Plurality of the Inhabited Worlds. That's the first one he wrote, which was a kind of a revolution at that time, because, and by the way, his boss in the Observatory of Paris did not appreciate so much, and he fired him, But he immediately found another job early after. And then he also wrote another book. It was not under his name, but it was under a pseudonym called Hermes, where he wrote about the unknown material phenomenon, all this possibility of tables moving, of haunted houses, and so on. And this book, the first issue was in 1865. He revised it then later on, even in the 20th century, and it's one, the last edition are 2 volumes of 500 pages, full of phenomena and observation. And he clearly spent all the time of his life stating that these phenomena are true, they are authentic. It's not magic, it's nothing invented or illusion. These phenomena are absolutely real, and science shall investigate them. Unfortunately, today we have parapsychology and so on, but science does not yet study this phenomenon as it should.
Yeah, the
but
funding.
That was also something he was fighting for during his whole life, and it started already at the period of Kardec.
Yeah, and the fight still needs to go on, because the funding for parapsychology is significantly less than the funding in other areas. But the implications of parapsychology seem to be much larger than the implications that a lot of this other money is going to. So that, that's what strikes me as Flammarion being so important, because he was fighting this fight, I would say, very early on, as materialism was coming along, and he was seeing that science is still a valuable tool in studying all of these things, and in fact in improving some of these things. And I would argue that he lays out I don't know of anyone else that has presented so much evidence, positive evidence, as he does in the books The Unknown and Death and its Mysteries, compiling thousands of different reports from contemporary France at his time. And in these reports, if you just zoom in on one story, like the 3 sisters who were in the bedroom, and one has a dream of their deceased mother who comes over and kisses her on the cheek, whereas another sister sees an apparition of the mother come over and kiss that sister on the cheek. What we're seeing there is this overlap and interplay between the dream world and waking reality.
Exactly. So he gathered it because he got known for this type of investigation he made. since the 1860s, you know. And then a lot of people sent him spontaneously the report of the facts, and then he went sometime to visit the people to check what they said, and he has also observed some phenomena by himself. And at the end, I don't have the exact number, but it was something like 5,000 really strong cases that he could observe and that he published, because there is a non-physical phenomenon, 2 volumes of 500 pages, and the before death, during death, after death, and the haunted houses. So he has something like 8 or 9 books specifically telling about facts. Well, maybe there is one who continued a little bit after him, this type of work. It was Ernesto Bozzano from Italy. He also was a huge, gigant, how to say, fact compiler. And he was something like 1 generation younger than Flammarion. And he also wrote tens of books stating facts. So today, these people are reacting. Yeah, it's old. It's how to say past stuff and so on. It has no validity. But no, I mean, the people continue facing this type of facts. Haunted houses there are every day, everywhere. You know, all around the world. And
That's right.
there is no change in it. I mean, all the work he has done and Bozzano is absolutely still valid, and science still is not investigating, because the scientific people, and Flammarion is stating that very clearly, they want to investigate or to make experiments like they do with chemistry or whatever. You take product A, product B, you mix it, you heat up or whatever, and you get product C or whatever. But the spiritist phenomena are not like this. They come spontaneously, and you have to be there, ready, and wait they occur, and then observe them. And there is also another difference. It's a high subjective content in those phenomena. I think the parapsychologists are very aware of it. Even the parapsychologic experimenter is influencing the phenomenon itself, you know. Why? We know as spiritists because there are spirits involved. And the spirits, they come if they want, if they are happy, if they think it's worth, you know. And all this has to be taken into account. It's not just as per the will of the people willing to experiment.
That's right. And I would like to briefly segue into some of your own personal interest in these phenomena, and perhaps, you know, are there any experiences that you have had that maybe initially opened your mind to this whole area of exploration?
Yes, I mean, there are basically 2. One, it was when I was, or maybe 3. When I was young, I was, you know, in the holiday colonies. I don't know what's the name, the holiday camp. And during a night, it was a big dormitory where you had something like 20 or 30 teenagers sleeping. And one night, I woke up, and there was someone in my bed. And what are you doing in my bed? But when I got more awake and I observed, I saw I was in the bed of my neighbor, you know, with my sleeping bag inside his sleeping bag. So oh, sorry, apologize, went back to my bed. And the same happened, I don't know how long before, because how long after, because I didn't read the clock. A couple of times later in the other bed on the other side, you know. So a kind of a natural somnambulism, as we say. And then there was, I was a little bit older, already in the gymnasium, and I had a recurrent dream, which was you will get the best rating at the exam. You know, there's this exam in France that closes the gymnasium before going to the university. And only in my class, there were 3 or 5 or 6 who were clearly average, much better than me, getting higher rating. But this dream repeated something like 10 times. And at the end, the exam came. I went there without a lot of concern because I did not face a lot of difficulties. And the result of the exam is I got the best rating of the whole region. So you see, that was a premonitory dream about an event which is highly improbable, And this also touched me a little bit. But the third one, which really touched me more, was I was already married, and there was a person in the family who was, how to say, also in the university and got really heavily jeopardized by a professor, which was absolutely unfair with this person. And this was a kind of an emotional shock, and this person started getting depressed, not sleeping anymore, so go to take medicine to sleep, and again not sleeping, and the psychiatrist also not helping with all these drugs and so on. And I saw her at a given point in time, it was at night. She was telling about herself as a third person, and the voice was not her voice. So that's when it was in Brazil, by the way. And that was really when I thought, hey, guy, now you are getting mad. So you have now to stand up and to try to understand what the hell is happening here. So the next day, it was a city in northeast of Brazil. It was, the telephone book, sick like that. I opened it almost randomly, and I found immediately a Federação Espírita Pernambuco. So we called someone, yes, you can come this time. There will be somebody here to receive you. And we went there, and that is how it started. Because only the fact this person arrived there was an immediate betterment, just only to enter in the go through the fence and enter in the room where that person was in order to talk, to make to help us. Yeah. And then came the healers, so they proposed, please go there, you can have healing and so on. Then there was a speech, you can stay and listen to the speech and whatever. And you can also write your name on the paper and putting in a kind of a box there. So it was Tuesday. Wednesday, you have to stay at home, quiet. You make some reading between this time and that time. And then Thursday, you come back and check the result. So this person who had these problems filled it in without indicating what she had. And I, by curiosity, filled it in as well, So we were quiet on the Wednesday, and when we came back on Thursday to get the result, on her paper it was written special sessions, magnetized water, healing sessions, and a lot of things. And in my paper it was written, read Kardec. So, okay, it was another one. And then I started reading Kardec, and Kardec knows how to write to an engineer as I am. And it was really this rational approach he had who really convinced me, And then, of course, we understood what happened. This person was suffering and spiritual harassment or obsession. I don't know exactly the wording in English. And later on, they explained us what they did. She had some special sessions, so she went there. There were people reading and singing and doing stuff like that. And at the same time, in a different room, there was a mediumistic meeting where they called the spirit which was harassing her, and in order to convince the spirit to stopping doing that. And this is how the problem got solved. So psychiatrists could not help, all the medicine, nothing could help, but there she found a solution. And she had the mediumship faculty. She didn't know also exactly what it is. And now the fact to know what it is, how it is, but she's just living with since that time without a major problem. So, it was to say a fact of something which it worked, it was
Yeah.
efficient, and plus the theory, rational theory behind, that is how it started.
And you got to see that from the beginning to the end, and I'm sure that helped solidify your curiosity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then I was reading also some Brazilian books because I'm reading Portuguese of Chico Xavier, Divaldo Pereira Franco. And then we went back to France in the 90s and started in France. It was not a desert, but there were, let's say, 5 or 6 groups in France. I had to drive 600 kilometers to reach the center. But then I would say I was participating, involving more and more, translating stuff from Portuguese to French, founding a Spiritist group in the region I was living in 1997. And then I got involved in the International Spiritist Council because I was speaking English, Portuguese, French, Spanish, a little bit German, and so on. And so this is how I came until today, still moving and studying and making researches and participating to events like the one today in order to disseminate this idea without doing proselytism, but just to explain, look, it's really something revolutionary. It's a rational approach of spirituality.
Yes.
So Kardec really opened it that way. Of course, now we have more and more movements going also that way, and this is good. This is a good thing.
Yes, it is very good. And so Spiritism presents a situation where the individual is in a way um, maybe surrounded by spirits would put it too strongly, but that the spirit world is totally impressed over our waking reality, and there are any number of circumstances which might connect us to spirits, and spirits can possibly underlie a lot of things that we take. I got a message in a dream, and it's like, was that my subconscious or an aspect of my higher self, or was this an interaction with spirit? So it opens our eyes a little bit more to the idea that spirits can be behind a number of the phenomena of consciousness in our waking
Exactly.
life.
Exactly. And Kardec's observation and all the observation in the meantime, and even the fact I just told you, is bringing evidences about this. The haunted houses, all these facts told by Flammarion, most of them, you can only explain them by a kind of a spiritual influence on the physical stuff and on the people. We have a spirit. So our spirit is influenced by the other spirits, even if they are not incarnated. And when they come and communicate, they say, yeah, I was this and that, giving identities, showing that they are nothing more than they were incarnated before they died and returned in the spiritual world. So this is why I told you, Flammarion, about always we got these inspirations in all what we do. What is inspiration? What is intuition? Science knows very little about it. And the spiritist is bringing a new light on it. It's when a spirit is suggesting you an idea. This
That's
is when
right.
it goes, of course, to the positive side, but it can also go on the negative side. If you are oriented to evil or hate or violence or whatever, or sex or drugs, you will attract spirits with the same type of thinking. And instead of going into a positive loop, you go into a vicious circle.
Mm,
It's very important to know this, and it helps us to be careful, because once you get a little bit initiated, once you get also this feeling, you see immediately when you go in bad thoughts how this is pushing you somehow. So the fact to be aware allows you to react early up front in order to go in a too deep crisis, and to come back and seek for help from the benefactors or guardian angel or whatever, which are, again, as you told, always around us. But now, around us, what does it mean? Huh? We are in a four-dimensional space-time when we are incarnated, and the spirits, they have probably much more dimensions, because for them, the time does not exist as for us. It's not limiting factor. They can go from here to Jupiter, for instance, much quicker than the light, much quicker than 300,000 kilometers per second. So they may be capable of projecting themselves at a given place in a given point in time. This is what we mean when they are around us.
And they might be able to present themselves in a way that is suitable to the person that they're presenting themselves to. There's few ways for us to tell what powers the spirits have at their disposal. And I'm also reminded how Flammarion saw that this understanding was not anything new. Perhaps the scientific tools and some of the new insights, post-enlightenment insights, that represented something new. But he pointed out in a very universalist way that, ancestor worship has been going on across the world since the dawn of time in all of its various forms. And as far as inspiration goes, of course, the Greeks with their muses of poetry and so on seem to have always had that understanding that there was some other intelligence involved there. So it presents a scenario in which we're not alone by any means, and we actually might have access to a number of different intelligences who are interested in our well-being as well.
Exactly. As I told you, this Kardec did not invent anything. He just had a different approach for observing these phenomena, who exist since human exists on the earth. It's a mental faculty. And this is a proof in favor of it, because whatever the region, whatever the time, whatever the culture, you find it everywhere. So it's very strong to say, by chance, all the people, they could not communicate at that time. Of course, today it's more difficult with the internet, the speed of communication. You do not get the independency as we got from the past. So these all are really evidences. And Kardec started the rational approach. I think he did not stop to the phenomenon itself. He was convinced that the table was moving, so he stopped. His goal was not moving the table. It was more to push out, okay, what is the philosophy behind and what are the ethical consequences of it? We have a spirit, the spirit survives, so what? What does the spirit become after death, depending on what he did during a life, And there he saw that all these ethical consequences which came out of it are absolutely consistent with the moral teaching of Christ, but also of Confucius, wherever around the world. All what these missionaries have teach at the origin of any religion. Even Moses with the Ten Commandments. This is something which is universal, and it came out again through this observation of the spirits. So that was more Kardec goal, than scientific investigation. Flammarion, no. He was after the death of Kardec, a little bit later, he entered in this Society for Psychical Research. There were the SPR in London, also in US, I think it was in Boston. But there were also a lot of such societies in Europe, everywhere in France. And he participated to experiments with the Zappia Palladino, with materialization, with physical effects, with weights, physical actions without contact and things like that. So he participated a lot to those investigations, together with a lot of other researchers like Charles Richet, Gustave Gelet. Before them, there was William Crookes in UK. But the difference maybe between him and the other researchers was that he was convinced that the spirit exists and believing in God, you know. So some of the others were not so far yet as himself, you know, but he always respected all the ideas of everyone and managed to stay in very good contact both with the spiritists and also with these psychic researchers. And that was really one of the characteristics of Camille Flammarion. It is really at the end of his life, beginning of WW1 until his death, which was 100 years ago. It was in 1925 in June. In June, it was the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of his death. In this last period, he was then much more stronger oriented to the compiling all these books we talked about at the beginning, rather than continuing books for disseminating his science, which was astronomy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in all of the categories that he puts together in his book, The Unknown, Flammarion. These are categories that he was also recognizing were by no means, you know, isolated to France. They had always been going on, and I think these, as more of a universalist thinker myself, I think these are some key insights, because they're not necessarily, you know, religions have ways of they have particularities in how you're going to worship. But it's like religion doesn't necessarily inform us about what is going on when a house is haunted, what is going on with the dream phenomena and whatnot. Whereas these more scientifically oriented movements can start to hash these things out and present more of a rational worldview that doesn't discard spiritual reality, but sees spiritual reality as an ontological prior that we already sort of take for granted, and then we move from that. So I think as things go forward and materialism increasingly becomes nonsensical, we're going to find ourselves reaching back to some of these great writers who have compiled vast anthologies of experiences and seeing, oh yeah, I've had that happen to me as well, or my aunt had that happen over there. And I'm sure with your experience, with the societies that you've been in touch with, I'm sure you've had a lot of people present their own stories of their personal experiences. And sometimes, as these things go, you know, skeptics will get in there. Maybe something piqued their curiosity a little bit, they get involved, and then all of a sudden it sets off this cascade, and the worldview changes radically.
Exactly. I think you told very wisely at the beginning that parapsychology for funding, it's very difficult. And there is a very simple reason behind this, because it doesn't give any financial return short term, you know. There were some investigation by NASA or by Russians during the Cold War in the 60s or whatsoever. Why? Because they were interested in having guys which could go out of the body, goes to the other side, inside the secret places, give information about the papers and so on. So this is what they wanted to reach. They could observe it in several occasions, as we can see it from the literature, but it was not systematically reliable. You know, there are mistakes and so on. So that's why at the end, okay, it's not practical enough. But they also came to the conclusion that the phenomenon is real.
Yes.
But it depends on some, again, it's subjective, and the subjective about the experimenters, the people who are there, and the spirits, because a lot of those phenomena cannot happen if the spirits does not want these phenomena to happen. And this is something fundamental. So what is your intent? Is it really to fight and to make war or whatsoever, to get power or money? They are not interested in those things, because money, you know, the credit card doesn't work in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
So this is something fundamental. And Flammarion was also very strong in its disinterestedness. You know, he didn't do that for money, or he didn't do that to get famous or whatever. He was really objective, neutral, really science for science, knowledge for knowledge, and nothing else, you know.
Mm.
And this is something which has to come back now a little bit, because as you told also, the materialism will not last much longer. Huh?
Yes.
The resources of our planet are not infinite. So there will be a scarcity very soon, and then the prices go up. There will be a crisis, whatever. We see already the effects on the climate change and so on. So this is getting now more and more obvious. So something will fundamentally have to change in our societies to mitigate all this and to make such that the humanity can continue living on the earth, because that's really one of the threats we have today. Huh? If we don't take care, maybe the humanity will disappear from the earth. You have
Yeah.
still a couple of crazy guys which just pushing to a button, they can explode the world or almost, you know. So these are things that, I mean, the conscience of the people, at the end, who will push that? It will be us, the people, the public opinion, you know. We don't want these things anymore, you know. And this is what, at the end, will change. And also what we can see, for instance, in the investigation about NDEs, it's very attracting a lot of people, and you have hundreds, thousands of NDEs now with the progress of the reanimation and so on. But the scientists are still skeptic around it, you know. But a
Yeah.
guy who had the experience himself, he will look to the scientists and say, okay, you may believe whatever you want, but I have seen it.
Right. Yes.
So
And
you may not believe in it, but and if the scientists do not take care, there will be another phenomenon, which by the way we can see already. It's the rejection of the scientific authority.
mm,
You see, the anti-vax or whatever, we have already several cases where no, all the scientists are influenced by big pharma or by whoever or whatever, and the people reject. I don't think it's a good thing. Huh? They reject the scientific authority. So science has really now to step down a little bit, to go a little bit down.
yeah.
And but about the funding, it's really a problem, I think, of private funding, which is in course today, will hardly finance psychical research. We do not give any return short term. So there has been again some kind of public funding or crowdfunding or whatever from
Yeah.
disinterested people, you know, in order to have those investigations progressing. Because
Well,
clearly, for me, it's the only sustainable future for the humanity on the earth, huh? Is to change the paradigm, go out of this materialism, and enter in the spiritualist paradigm. That's the only way, sustainable way for the future of humanity.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think it's when scientists largely appear to be acting unscientifically that the public starts, rightfully so, getting very frustrated. I think in terms of spiritual phenomena, this is especially at the forefront right now. I mean, we have like Dr. Diane Powell, who's doing some of the nonverbal autistic telepathy experiments
Mhm.
and so forth. As the telepathy tapes, I'm sure you're aware, has been a
Yeah,
kind of international phenomena, because it's reminding us yet again, hey, there's still this total area of consciousness that everyone just is doing their best to just run away from as fast as possible. For whatever reason,
exactly.
if you get involved with this stuff, a certain amount of authorities can paint you as a total, farce, and you've gone crazy, and yet the actual evidence is mounting and mounting and mounting. So there will
Exactly.
be eventually some kind of breaking point, and I guess a number of scientists are just going to get left by the wayside, and a new batch of scientists are going to come in. I don't know exactly.
Mhm.
We don't know exactly how it's all going to look. I doubt it's going to be, one day the new paradigm
No,
comes, and then the other day it's always this gradual, this negotiation, this
exactly.
conversation that happens. And it's talks like this that I think help it out. And it's also looking back, which is, part of what I'm interested in. looking back and seeing that all of these different categories of phenomena, NDEs included, they are universal and they are
Exactly.
timeless. And now we have this opportunity where we have all of these accounts, we have all this information at our fingertips, all of these new tools, and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of anti-dogmatism, which I think is good. So we're seeing the opportunity arise, yet again, and I take the optimist approach. I think we have more tools than ever to help, figure all of this stuff out. And
Exactly.
let's bring in the spiritists and their literature as well as another tool that just it bursts the gates open with the floodwaters of evidence and accounts. So it's a very, very exciting in that regard.
Exactly, yes, and it works. You have all these uh, non-traditional therapies, spiritual aids, prayers. You have healing and solving heavy problems, health problem of so many peoples. And this is, by the way, one point where there can be some return. And I admire, for instance, in US and in UK. In UK, the NHS is now subsidizing yoga, is subsidizing some parallel therapies. Of course, not everything, huh? But therapies which are at the end are cheaper than the conventional therapies.
Mm.
And these are really good signs because at the end, when it will multiply, as you told, it will bring more and more evidences that really it works. And the people who were ill are not ill anymore after this. So there are really positive results. So people may say, no, it's a placebo, it's whatever, blah, blah. Well, doesn't matter. It worked.
Yes.
The result has been, the goal had been reached. And through this evidence, I think the public opinion will grow. I think we have more than at least one third of the humanity is convinced that the life continues after days, after death, that we have a soul and so on. One third is maybe yes, but I'm not 100% sure. And one third who still believe no, there is nothing like that. So you have something like half of the people already convinced. And
Yeah.
this at the end will come with pressure when it increases a little bit more through the evidences brought by these practices. And at the end, I think when it will change, it will not be from one day to the other, but I think there will be scientists who were denying a couple, let's say 10 years later, but yes, of course, it's true.
Right, right. That,
So
yeah.
you need to okay they may save the face and whatever, but okay, maybe I will not see it in this life anymore, but when it will come, maybe with some help like COVID. COVID was a kind of a training of
Hmm.
okay, let's think a little bit different. Huh? If there is now, for instance, an economic crisis or whatever, or a war or a heavier war, this can then accelerate the coming of this change of paradigm. But
Yes,
it's a
and
question of time. We are sure we will get there.
that's right. That's right. And I think it's as these collective belief systems start to shift in a more positive, spiritually affirming approach, I think you're actually going to see more and more phenomena appear, that
Exactly.
were essentially just dormant, and they're waiting on us to adjust our belief systems in order to be open-minded to these phenomena coming in. I mean, I know in my own personal life, it wasn't necessarily until I was ready to accept that these things might actually be real, that they were like, okay, then that means we're going to enter into your reality a little bit more. And I've talked to countless people who also have a similar experience. I think with
Sorry.
the belief systems, that is going to be the key factor there. And even I would think the placebo effect itself is playing into a belief system there and showing the
Yeah.
power of our own beliefs. And so I'm sure that the power of our beliefs also extends through the spiritual realm as well, and taps into this non-locality,
Exactly.
as we see some of these spiritual phenomena present themselves, even ghosts seem to bilocate, and some ancient sages were said to be in two places at once, or at least be seen in two places at once. So these are all little hints of something more going on.
Exactly, yes. And by the way, I was convinced that the table moved, could move. It was only something like 10 years later that I could see it with my own eyes,
Mm.
when I was already back in France. But okay, for instance, there are these ectoplasmic experiments. Huh? It's absolutely unbelievable, You when you look to the reports of William Crookes, huh? The medium was losing half of his weight, and there was Katie King materialized with a different heart beating, with a different lungs. He could check everything he wanted to check, huh? Making sure that Katie King was absolutely different compared with Florence Cook. And how could Florence Cook lose half of her weight going to have a materialization? And after this, all this coming back at the right place in Florence Cook's body. It's amazing when you think about that. But it's true, you
Yeah.
know. And of course today people were, because this was really a phenomenon which was hurting the skeptical scientists, and they were also fighting against it, and it was more a fraud hunting than really a research.
Mm.
And this is also something that we should restart now with, as you told, we have different means. We have infrared cams, we can see in full night, even as it would be in full day. We could observe much more, much better. And I'm sure the day there is a research program, a serious research program with serious people without preconceived ideas in favor or against, for sure the spirits will help and participate and bring the mediums and the phenomenon in order to make the science progress.
Mm.
But as long as it is fraud hunting, they will not lose their time.
Yeah, and I think it's been shown. It's been shown that if people bring in a lot of this negative baggage into an experience, it can create enough tension to where the experience or the expected phenomena just doesn't appear. Um,
Doesn't work.
yeah,
But
I've
as I
I've
told,
talked.
it's influence of the experimenter. When he
Yes,
comes with opposite ideas, he can block the phenomenon.
that's right.
And this is part, it has to be integrated in the scientific method
Mm.
for investigating. We have now double blind, triple blind protocols and so on, but it's not enough. It has also to integrate all these subjective aspects which are involved in this type of phenomenon. No? Influence of the medium, influence of the experimenter, and influence of the spirits that we don't even
Mm.
see.
So I'm curious to get your perspective on the UFO or UAP phenomena. And I know that's a tall order, but right now in the States especially, but I'm seeing that this is a global phenomena as well. We have the sightings of these orange orbs, so the spheres of light. They can take various colors, but the orange appears to be, very prevalent, and a lot of these phenomena come when individuals are going out and doing a meditation, doing a kind of ritual as well. And it's not to say that we know exactly what these are, whether they're extraterrestrials or this or that, but the fact that it's like something is happening, that is becoming more concretized right now in America. This openness to, well, something clearly is happening. We don't necessarily have conclusions beyond that. So how do you see the UFO phenomena?
Yes, so I'm not a big specialist, but from what I have read and understood about it, and with the Spiritist interpretation about it, is of course, I mean, there is, by Flammarion has written his first book, the plurality of the inhabited worlds. It's not only the Earth which is inhabited by intelligence being or human beings. So there are other planets. And if some other planets are more evolved than the Earth, why couldn't they move to Earth to come and to visit us? So it's something which is part, I would say, of it's a direct consequence of the philosophy, and of this notion of plurality of inhabited worlds. So now the questions are, some people, some movies are saying, no, they will come in order to invade us and to make us a slave and whatever. Well, if they are not so evolved, I don't see how they could come. We are not capable to go until Mars, or even less to go to the next solar system, because for us, with our physical body, it's impossible.
Yeah.
If they are less evolved than us, how can they come up to here?
Mm.
It makes no sense. If they are able to come up to here, it's because they are more advanced and because their bodies are not so dense, not so material as our bodies. Otherwise, they could not come. So this also tends to prove that if they come, is because they are good and because they are here to help us. And then how are they finding ways to become visible or tangible to us? That's then also very interesting to investigate. Of course, as you told, why orange, why this color and
Yeah.
that color, and it has also been seen through measuring the accelerations of the curves and whatever that no human can withstand such things. Of course, but it's true that there are a lot of evidences, but we see, in my view, a spirit which does not inhabit the world is extraterrestrian.
Mm.
It's as
Right.
simple as this.
Yeah.
We have extraterrestrial. For me, it's something absolutely natural.
Yes.
So again, it's something where we encourage all the investigations, observation, and even scientific studies to find out more about it.
That's right.
Because one of the critical points is exactly where is the interface between the spirit and the physical body and the matter. Huh?
Mm.
How does our spirit and our spiritual body interact on our physical body? You can see yourself on the cam. So you see the interaction constantly. So where is it? So you have the Penrose-Hameroff theory about Bose-Einstein condensation in nanostructure in the brain cells and whatever. These are the type of approach that we really should develop and to try to find that in order to go out of the matter, of the particle table, of the Mendeleev table, and find out what is this spiritual matter, what is the composition of the spiritual body, and how can this interact with our matter.
Mm.
And when we observe life, all what is living, we see permanently this interaction. And during UFOs, okay, it's a little bit different, but they also find ways to make them become evident, to become perceivable.
That's
And
right.
this has to be investigated. And like ectoplasm is the same thing.
Yeah.
How can cells of our body go out, half of our body, and then come back at the right place? So it's something totally out of the known biological laws. But
Yes.
it is a fact. So we should go and investigate more.
Yes. And in
So
one of
it's part of the set.
that's right. And in one of in a number of Flammarion's collected accounts, one that really struck me, there was a whole series about luminous apparitions. The apparitions
Yes.
that showed up and they were luminous. And one in particular, one is described as sort of an orange disc at the end of this
Yeah.
gentleman's bed, and he got this telepathic impression that it was actually his cousin, and his cousin had just died. But he manifested as this glowing disc of light that you would almost find in a modern abduction phenomena account, or something like this, or in someone seeing the orbs appear. So there's, just like we were
Exactly.
talking about the dream world overlaying with waking reality, we also have the UAP phenomena overlaying in the spiritual phenomena
Yes.
departments. I don't think it would be right to separate these two, and like the
No.
UFO
No.
phenomena is purely mechanistic, it's purely nuts and bolts. There's clearly this interaction, but both of these things are going on, and in a way, if they could spiritually represent themselves here and not come in more of a physical way, that would seem to be a smarter way of going about it. You wouldn't have to expound as much fuel or anything else that you're using. You could simply just manifest yourself here. So it's what we're dealing with is this need for a new renaissance of thinking, like reclaiming all of the value in the ancient past and in the recent past that affirms spiritual reality, and then taking a whole open-minded view to the utter weirdness that might arrive once the paradigm changes. So I think it's going to be, it will certainly not be boring, Charles. Let's just say that.
Sure not. It will be fantastic. So hopefully it will happen soon. So I still have the time to see at least in this life the beginning of it. Huh?
That's right. I think we are. I think we're seeing it slowly encroach until the point it will become so undeniable. That's what we want to see. We want to see it become undeniable here. But
Exactly. And this is what Flammarion and Bozzano, they worked a lot in this way. Huh? Of course, now it's 1 century old, huh? A little bit
yeah,
less for Bozzano. He died at the end of WW2. But I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge quantity of material. And of course, even today, when something is discovered in medicine or wherever, they make these historical studies and it adds up in the evidences and gives them the orientations to progress quicker in the researches. Huh?
mm,
So it's not lost for sure.
that's
But of
right.
course, as you told, we need really now to go with modern tools and investigation methods and calculations and IA, who knows, in order to progress. But what will be then the application on Earth? I think as long as we are in a full comfort mode as we are today, uh, there will not be a lot of motivation in this way.
Mm,
But once it gets more tight, then the motivation will grow, and that is really which will foster. Okay, let's think about, let's find new ways, and so on. And when all these ideas at the end will come back.
mm. Well,
We
so
work
as
a
we
lot in order to put all the Flammarion's book open access everywhere. There is also YAPSOP. I think you know them in US, a database with magazines and books everywhere, and with the internet now. And what I appreciate, it's absolutely with a full disinterestedness. Open access for
yeah,
free for everyone, because that will be the future. Collaborative work and with a full disinterestedness.
that's right. Yeah, and as we kind of draw to a close here, I'd like to revisit perhaps some of your own personal experiences, especially in these more these sort of séance settings, because I think when a lot of people they look back at the spiritualist movement and they see the séances going on, they're reminded of the Ouija board and stuff, and it's like, oh, spooky, inaccessible, old Victorian stuff going on, and it's not real
Exactly, yeah.
right at the forefront. But what were some experiences in those kind of environments that really hammered home some of your spiritual orientation?
As I told you, it was that problem that got solved, so thanks to that. Then I could see a moving table, indeed, and Ouija board also. They were practicing Ouija, but I saw immediately that it doesn't bring a lot more than just automatic writing.
Mm,
And then I would say it's more the how to say, we are doing, of course, mediumistic work. This mediumistic work is oriented in order to help both souls and also incarnated people which are ill. And what is also, from time to time, we get really strong results, and this is heavily motivating. I'll give you maybe another example. It was a lady. They found out she has a disease in her brain In French, it's called angiome. So it's not a tumor, but it's something in the brain which needs opening and surgery with possible effects and so on. So this lady came a little bit sad and afraid and so on. So we helped her. We made some healing and so on. And when she came back to the hospital for the surgery, they were doing another how to say scanner or IRM or MRI, I think in English, and the stuff disappeared. So the doctor could not understand how it disappeared, but it disappeared. So thank God, we managed to help her, and it was one of the strong results we had. Another one, which was more recently, we had also a colleague. He was getting some spiritual harassment, and he made some suicide attempt. And so he was in a psychiatric hospital taking drugs and so on. And the prognostic was not good. They said he will stay several months, if not a couple of years, here in treatment. So again, we tried to help. We got in the mediumistic meeting some very harsh spirits, probably from those who were harassing him. So we managed to bring them to better intentions and to stop doing what they were doing. And when we took some information from the guy, 2 weeks later, he was allowed to go back home, So again, it worked.
Wow.
So from time to time, there are things like that and some positive events. I think the spirits are helping us to keep us motivating, showing us that the result of what we are doing.
That's right.
And then, of course, you have also directly with spirits, spirits who you can help, because sometimes when you go in a cemetery or a place where there were some battles in the war or stuff like that, you get some spirits which come along with you in the mediumistic meeting, and when you manage to help them, you get friends. They then in turn help you and protect you and whatever, and you can feel that, and all this shows how by doing good, how these positive stuff are attracting positive stuff. You enter really in the good circle,
Yes.
and this is of course keeping us motivating and convinced, because we see the results. We see that it's not only theory, but it has also some practical results.
That's right, and the stakes are pretty high for some people in this scenario. So anything that actually can work should be exhausted to get the right solution. And when you say that some of these harsher spirits were making themselves apparent, how was that? Is that in more of the feelings sense, or is it in the material of the automatic writing itself? How does that come through?
In those meetings, mediumistic meeting, it's not writing, it's talking. It's psychophony, we say. So the medium is speaking. The spirit is speaking through the medium.
So,
So
as we would say, a channeling.
channeling, yes. So it's quicker for the dialogue, And then you have the orienter, the one who is talking to the spirit, making such to bring him to better intention, helping him with visualization. Sometimes some beloved spirit of this spirit is coming. He can perceive, and it works quite well. And once the spirit is then convinced and helped by some beloved one who came before him in the spiritual world, generally you solve the problem. It's one spirit less jeopardizing or hurting someone, because in the psychiatric hospitals you have a lot of people. They are not ill, they are simply suffering a spiritual influence. And it's not very easy to make the difference. I think in Brazil they are quite advanced in this. They have the Spiritist Hospital André Luiz in Guarulhos, close to São Paulo, where they do, it's a psychiatric hospital with psychiatrists, but they have also the mediumistic meetings in parallel. And by associating the conventional therapy with the spiritual therapy, they get much more result in some categories of mental diseases, or which in fact are not mental diseases, but there are spiritual influences. And there really, it's also something which will really pop up now, because showing better results in such things is influencing. And even we got, how to say, the psychiatrist, there is DSM-4, I think, for the psychiatrists, their manual is now saying, do not diagnose too quickly schizophrenic people who just claim hearing some voices, So it's changing, it's influencing, and the idea is really slowly but surely coming through. Again, through the results, and that is what is most important.
Well, Charles, I really appreciate your time here. Thank you for giving us some insight into the Spiritist movement, and I think we've had a great discussion on how we can take some of this evidence and move forward with it. So I really appreciate your openness to talking with me today.
Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure.
All right, you have a wonderful rest of your night.
You too. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you for watching American Esoteric. If you would like to support the channel and learn more about Charles Kempf's research, please find the links below in the description.